Hello aspirants, looking at current affairs for 30th Jan. The news items picked up from the Hindu newspaper are these 18. We'll look at them in detail. The first one, recovery will lift growth to 7 to 7.5%, says Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam. So this is the claim being made in the economic survey that the economy is set to grow at 7 to 7.5% in the next financial year. So this is because there will be revival in exports and investments. Though the negative effects of demonetization and even the teething troubles of GST will reduce. So this is there. Also, it has revised the GDP growth for current financial year. It says that it would be 6.75%, higher than the 6.5% estimated by the Central Statistics Office. So this is the positive outlook which the economic survey is providing. It highlights the twin balance sheet problem. So this term has come forth quite often. You should understand what does this mean. Balance sheet is the financial balance sheet. So there are two balance sheets which have the problem. One is the balance sheet of the corporate sector and other is the balance sheet of the banks. So this is related to NPAs, non-performing assets. So when corporates are taking loans from the banks and they are not able to repay it, the corporate sector, the industry or the company is suffering. So that is the balance sheet problem of the company, and because they are suffering, the banks are also not getting their loans back. So they are accumulating non-performing assets. The interest gets accumulated. So this is the problem in the balance sheet of banks now. So banks also suffer. So this is the twin balance sheet problem which we are facing presently. Also, the economic survey talks about cautioning about the rising oil prices and stock market prices. Which says that even for stock market prices, there is need for vigilance and preventive action. And in the medium term, the economic survey says that areas that require policy focus are employment, education, and agriculture specifically. So these three areas are also highlighted. So this you can see is the twin balance sheet problem. It talks of problem with the banks. So they loan money to corporates on interest, and the issue is that the interest does not come back or payment delays take place. It accumulates non-performing assets. And corporates, they take loans to invest to further their expand themselves, and then they become when the loans become unviable, if they are not able to repay the loan and they suffer in their businesses, then it results in their balance sheet also being troubled. So this is the gist of whole thing. So financial 2018, it is saying that there will be higher growth because of surge in exports and reforms such as GST and even bank recapitalization. And financial year 2019 will see better prospects, but there are risks which are highlighted. One is rising oil prices, and second is stock market, speculation and the stock market surge which has been seen presently. The stock prices are increasing. It may result in market corrections later and fall in prices, which will affect the economy too. So this is there. It also shows how tax base has gone up. So, despite GST, there have been number of unique registrations under GST, which has resulted in tax base going high. Then this talks of oil price spike presently in the year 2017-18, and this is the inflated potential. Corporate profits as a percentage of GDP is shown here. You can see. So here this shows India and this represents USA corporate profits. Then next is government has contained inflation, says President. So President Ramnath Kovind gave his joint address to the Parliament on the first day of the budget session, and he spoke about how the government has taken steps to contain inflation and fiscal deficit as such. He also spoke about digital initiatives like the Umang app, which has more than 100 public services available on the mobile phones. So you should know about this app. We have discussed this earlier. We will discuss it once again too. And he also talked about employment, and he said 10 crore loans have been provided under Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. So this is the PM Mudra Yojana launched in the budget 2015-16. Mudra, which is Micro Units Development Refinance Agency. So Mudra Bank has been established with a refinance corpus of 20,000 crore and it has a credit guarantee corpus of 3,000 crore. So this provides refinance for microfinance institutions. The microfinance institutions are in the business of lending. So this refinancing is provided to them. So this is the Mudra Bank and the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana launched. And then this is regarding UMANG. UMANG stands for Unified Mobile Application for New Age Governance. So this is one mobile app for availing various government services. So here you can see the facilities provided under UMANG are listed out. It's 12/7 customer support provided under it also. Integration with Aadhaar, DigiLocker and even payment gateway is there. There is a toll-free number as such too. So single app access to various government services. Presently there are more than 100 services. So services for students, farmers, health related, even youth related various schemes can be accessed through this UMANG app of the government. Then next is NGT Notice to Haji Ali Dargah Trust on Waste Management. So a petition has been filed before the National Green Tribunal in which it is alleged that there is insanitary condition in the Dargah area, the Haji Ali Dargah in Mumbai, and there is below average waste management here leading to illegal dumping and release of waste in the Arabian Sea. So this is the environment interest litigation being filed by a group of students. NGT has sent a notice to the Dargah Trust. Then next is install STPs 99 Bengaluru Flats Road. So National Green Tribunal has directed the Karnataka State Pollution Control Board to ensure that these 99 apartments which drain out sewage into the Belanda Lake. Belanda Lake we have discussed few days back. It was in news because of it catching fire again. So here there is sewage being let out into the lake by the neighboring apartments, and this is done without treating. So the National Green Tribunal has said that these apartments should mandatorily install sewage treatment plants. So on this now it has directed the Karnataka State Pollution Control Board to ensure that this is done. Actually the apartments here, the apartment associations are saying that it is not feasible for them because of economic reasons. That will be a costly affair. There is no free space for the sewage treatment plant to be installed, and also third thing they say is the structural instability due to the installation of these STPs. So on this the NGT has responded saying that you can have modular STPs installed in places, available free spaces, even especially the basements can be used, which will not pose any threat to structure of the project as well. And it says that economic reason has no consideration vis-a-vis environmental concerns. So this is the response. So these STPs have to be installed by these apartments now. So this is there. Also Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore has been asked to carry out a pilot project of the life cycle of macrophages and hyacinths present in the Belanda Lake. So this study would also be done. Then next is a morale booster for women army officers. So Defense Ministry has withdrawn an appeal against a 2012 Armed Forces Tribunal decision which had set aside the denial of promotions and benefits to short service and women commissioned officers commissioned before 2006. So actually this was a committee, Ajay Vikram Singh committee. So in 2004 government had accepted its recommendations that promotions of army officers at 2, 6 and 13 years of service should be done to the rank of captain, major and lieutenant colonel. So this recommendation was accepted, but this promotion was applicable to all commissioned officers, but later it was withheld for short service and women commissioned officers. So there was a different interpretation being done by the Army's Military Secretary's bench. So this was challenged before the Armed Forces Tribunal. Armed Forces Tribunal said no, they should also get the benefit, short service and women commissioned officers. So then the Defense Ministry appealed it in the Supreme Court. But now it has said that it is withdrawing this appeal. Okay. Then next is cow vigilantism. Supreme Court issues notice to Haryana, UP and Rajasthan. So this is actually a contempt petition which has been filed that the Supreme Court should take contempt action against these 3 states, Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, for not complying with its order. So in September 2017, Supreme Court had asked all the states to take stern measures to stop violence in the name of cow protection. So this petition has been filed by the great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, Mr. Tushar Gandhi. So the Supreme Court has asked these 3 states to respond on this petition. So the Supreme Court in September 2017 said that there should be a senior police officer appointed as nodal officer in every district within a week in September 2017. So then they should act promptly to check cow vigilance. They should not become these cow vigilance should not become law unto themselves. Also, there should be a dedicated task force in each district for this purpose, and that violence should stop. Also, chief secretaries in each state were asked to file status reports giving details of actions taken by them to prevent incidents of cow vigilantism. So, even the central government was asked to respond to the submission that it could issue directions under Article 256 of the Constitution to all state governments on issues related to law and order. So this Article 256, because in this case, the Supreme Court, the central government said that we have no power with us. This is the state subject. The states have to look into it. But the Supreme Court in this September 2017 order said no, the center is also responsible. It can issue directions under Article 256 of the Constitution. And whatever directions are issued by the center to the states have to oblige, have to follow them. So that is also means because law and order is actually a state subject. So this Article 256 gives powers to the center as well, and so the center is also responsible. So this was the Supreme Court ruling in 2017. You can see the details are provided here again regarding this September 2017 ruling, which we just discussed. Then next is ready for trade war. EU responds to Trump threat. So European Union has said that it stands ready to hit back swiftly and appropriately if US President Donald Trump takes unfair trade measures against the European Union, the 28 nation bloc. So Mr. Trump had recently approved tariffs on imported solar energy components and large washing machines, which we had discussed in news. So this would especially affect China and South Korea. So such measures, if they are taken against EU says we are ready to hit back. So this is a statement coming. The trade war as such going on. Then next, and you should know that with EU, USA has a trade deficit. In goods, US trade deficit is there, plus in services also there is little deficit. Though it is much smaller in services, but US has a deficit in EU-US trade. Then next is indirect taxpayer count rises. So the economic survey says that GST has resulted in 50% increase in the number of indirect taxpayers. So this means that under GST there have been around 1.7 million registrants. So increase in compliance. So these registrants are those with annual turnover limit of rupees 20 lakh or less. So this annual threshold, this is the threshold which has been kept. So those who have less than 20 lakh turnover, they have to comply under the composition scheme. Means they don't have to file returns on a monthly basis too. They can do a quarterly returns filing also. Plus even the taxation rates for them are low. So here actually registrants are voluntarily complying, and many of them are also opting to file their returns on a regular basis, means on a monthly basis, because otherwise they would not be able to get the benefit of input tax credits. So this has also been highlighted by the survey that GST has been successful, the tax base has increased. And also the distribution of GST base among the states is closely linked to the size of the economies. So means major producing states, they had this fear that the shift to this new GST system would undermine their tax collections, has also been dismissed now by this economic survey data. Also data on international exports of states have been brought out. So this is the first time that exports of each state, how exports take place from each state, is being studied, and it has shown that there is a strong correlation between export performance of a state and the standard of living in that state. So this has also been highlighted. Then also GST data shows that the formal sector in the country is much larger than earlier thought. So formality means, in terms of two terms. One is in terms of GST and also in terms of social security provisions, like those who are under employee social security scheme. So such formal employees as such also are about, an estimate is made that about 31% is non-agricultural workforce. So this is there in terms of social security provisions, and if you look at in terms of GST, then the formal sector payroll is 53%. So means much larger than this percentage estimate too. So accordingly, means 31% means 69% is working in agriculture, 31% is non-agricultural according to social security data. And in terms of GST data, 53% is in the formal sector and only 47% is in the agricultural sector or non-informal sector. So this is there. Then next is eliminate embedded tax to boost exports. So the economic survey suggests that GST Council should comprehensively review embedded taxes. So these embedded taxes which are there, these are to be eliminated so that it gives a boost to manufacturing exports in the country. Recently, means in 2016 actually, so the government had announced the 6,000 crore package for the apparel sector, the textile sector. So this major part of this was rebate on sales levies. So this was a rebate return provided to offset indirect taxes levied by the states. So this is an embedded tax, means there is a tax which is imposed, an extra tax which is being rebated now. So such embedded taxes have to be removed. So GST Council needs to look into this, is what the economic survey is suggesting. Plus also the GST Council says that there should be a comprehensive review of embedded taxes from products left outside GST too, like petroleum and electricity. And also of those which are under GST, like input tax credit. It says that input tax credit results in tax inversion. So taxes higher up in the chain are greater than those, taxes back in the chain are greater than those higher up in the chain. So this tax inversion results in input tax credit demands being made much higher rate. So this is also an anomaly which needs to be corrected. So tax inversion is a term which is generally used when the taxation levels as such, where it should actually be high are low and where it should be low are high. So tax inversion generally takes place when even a company sets up its base somewhere else, a subsidiary somewhere else, and it shifts all its money up there. So the parent company will have low tax, and the company the company under it will have higher tax and will be based in a tax haven where taxation levels are low. So this is kind of tax evasion through tax inversion. So the input tax credit also is seen that tax inversion aspect is also seen in this case, because there is high input tax credit demanded in the lower chain, means in the supply chain. At the lower level, input tax credit demanded is quite high. So this is aspect highlighted. Then also it suggests that the formulation of a national integrated logistics policy should take place to bring transparency and efficiency in logistics operation. So this is also a suggestion of the economic survey, and it says that if there is a 10% decrease in indirect logistics cost, exports increase by 5 to 8%. Then another thing which it points out to is the data which we just saw, international exports of states. So first time in Indian history this has been done, and also with respect to exports, it says that India has no export superstars. Otherwise, there are some firms in every country. In many countries, like examples are given of Brazil, Germany, Mexico and USA. So here the top 1% firms account for 72, 68, 67 and 55% of exports respectively. Means even in the worst case here 55% means in USA too, top 1% firms account for 55% of exports. So these are export superstars as they are called. But India has no export superstars. India's top 1% account for only 38% of the exports. So means in India there is a more egalitarian export structure. Means everybody benefits from exports. That's what it is trying to highlight. So this is there. This is the corporate tax inversion detailed out in terms of USA. So when a US based company buys out a foreign company, then shifts its legal address to that lower tax nation. then it is called tax inversion. So in these cases, the government suffers. They may not get the tax which is due to them. The next is tax litigation taking toll on economy. So the economic survey has highlighted that the income tax department makes appeals in number of direct and indirect taxes claims which it has. So the success rate of income tax department is less than 30%. So there is a huge amount of claim for indirect and direct taxes which is stuck in litigation. So if you look at the entire amount, it comes up to 4.7% of the GDP of the country. So what happens is that the tax department is actually the largest litigant. 85% of direct tax cases are arising out of its appeals. So and in such cases it loses 65% of its cases. So the success rate is also quite low. That's why what is been highlighted by the economic survey is that only in the income tax department should not follow up all these cases, because even the amount involved, there are very few cases which have a huge amount of money involved, and other cases have very low amount, less than 10,000 involved. So in such cases, actually spending is more than what the government would gain. So this has been highlighted. Another aspect highlighted is that many of these cases go to the judiciary also. So after the income tax appellate tribunal, High Court, Supreme Court look into the matter. So what happens is the tribunal cases actually go before the Supreme Court in terms of special leave petition, in the form of special leave petition. So this initially, the economic survey says that such special leave petitions were invoked by the Supreme Court in rare cases, exceptional circumstances, but now it has become a norm. So the rate of admitting SLPs has increased from 25% in 2008 to around 40% in 2016. So this is also a tendency which has been highlighted by the economic survey. So also it says that dedicated subject matter courts as such have huge benefits. Like there has been an exclusive bench for taxation cases. So such benches have good results. There can be such benches for other subject matters also. Then next is India needs $4.5 trillion for infrastructure. So Indian requirement for infrastructure is around $4.5 trillion by 2040. So that economic growth can improve according to the economic survey. So this actually, according to current trend, $3.9 trillion infrastructure investment would come forth. But the remaining would be a vacuum which needs to be filled. To fill this infrastructure investment gap, the economic survey highlights that there is a need for private investment coming forth, and institutions dedicated to infrastructure financing like National Infrastructure Investment Bank could be beneficial, and also global institutions like Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, New Development Bank, which are focusing on these aspects, can also fund infrastructure projects in the country. Also, it says that there is a huge scope for developing the shipbuilding industry in the country because of the location of the country too, and it will generate millions of jobs as well. So it highlights these projects which are presently running as well as the projects which are facing cost overruns and time overruns, being delayed because of huge amount of cost and time involved. So this is there. Also, with respect to Indian Railways, the economic survey says that freight movement through Indian Railways has been declining, and this is because of non-competitive tariff structure. Because freight tariff is quite high and passenger tariff remains low. So freight tariff sometimes is much higher than even road tariff as such. So then railways is not the preferred mode. So the railways is suffering on this part too, is being highlighted by the survey. And also with respect to telecom sector, among the infrastructure sector, it says that there is a huge amount of losses, debt, which is being piled up now. So this aspect has also been highlighted. Then next is CEA cautions investors on stocks touching record highs. So the Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam in the economic survey, he says that the rise in stock market indices should be monitored closely and investors should exercise caution, because Indian equity markets are actually touching new peaks on an almost a daily basis. But around the world, we are seeing that asset prices are going high, but then they tend to fall also when there is a correction. stock market correction taking place. So then in such cases, the small investors may suffer. So there is a need for caution, which has been highlighted by the Chief Economic Advisor here. Then next is climate change may hit farm income. So the economic survey says that farmer income may be reduced because of climate change. So a loss in farmer income can take place between around 15 to 18% on an average because of climate change, and it will be much higher in those regions which are unirrigated. So this would be 20 to 25% loss to the farmers. So here actually this figures have come forth through the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predicted data, that how temperature and precipitation changes affects farming. So the Prime Minister has also highlighted quite often that there is a target of doubling farmers' income. But then there are huge constraints here, and major constraint which is highlighted is the vulnerability to long-term climate change, and especially in non-irrigated areas. So expanding irrigation is of huge significance according to the economic survey. There is rising water scarcity and depleting groundwater resources. So here it says that in 1960, less than 20% of agriculture was irrigated, and now it is around mid 40% that is irrigated. But there is a need for adoption of technologies like drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, and water management. Even key aspects like more crop for every drop campaign have to be further enforced. Also, the economic survey says that power subsidies need to be replaced by direct benefit transfer so that power can be fully costed and water conservation further. So this is also a point made by the economic survey. Then next is farm sector sees feminization, says survey. So here the survey highlights that there is rise in migration of men from rural to urban areas, and with this we see feminization of the agricultural sector. That large number of women are taking up roles of cultivators, entrepreneurs and laborers. So feminization is taking place, and that's why there is a need for inclusive transformative agriculture policy which will be aiming at gender specific interventions. So rural women are more responsible for integrated management and use of diverse natural resources now. So the government has to take this into consideration. Even Census 2011 said that out of total female main workers, 55% were agricultural laborers and 24% were cultivators. So this highlights the participation of women in agriculture too. But then in terms of land holding, it is seen only 12.8% of the operational holdings were owned by women. So there is the gender disparity in land holding ownership in agriculture. Also, government has actually taken steps, gender budgeting as such is done. So at least 30% of budget allocation is earmarked by the government for women beneficiaries on all ongoing schemes. So this is already in place. Also, women self-help groups are promoted. So 30% are women. So this is also there. Then next is household cash savings dipped to 50%. So the economic survey says that after demonetization, Indian households are moving away from savings in cash to savings in financial assets. So savings in cash have reduced. So overall financial savings of the households increased more than 20% in 2016-17, but decline in savings in currency was seen of more than 250%. So they save in financial assets, other financial assets like bank deposits, life insurance funds and shares and debentures. So growth in savings in mutual funds have also increased drastically by more than 40% as such. But then the economic survey says that savings rate is fine, but investment rate is the one which will actually improve and have an effect on the economy. So this is also a point we need here. So there is a need to improve investment rate more than savings rate. So investment rate, even if you see overall picture, investment rate as a share of GDP has declined by nearly 5.6 percentage points between 2011 and 2015, and even savings rate has declined, though at a lower percentage compared to 2011-12 to 2013-14. So individually on each aspect it is highlighting growth and decline in various aspects, but overall savings rate has declined. Then next is India spending on science below economic capacity, says Economic Survey. So India currently spends only 0.5% of GDP on research and development. So this is actually 2015 data. So this is far below its economic capacity. China and USA spend 1% and 2.5% respectively on research and development. India has actually improved on scientific publications. It's currently 6th in the world. But then still in terms of quality, it goes quite low, and even as compared to China, the figures are quite low. Also, the survey with respect to science says there should be missions, dedicated missions, even in missions in mathematics, missions in genomics. India should also consider creating a detailed gene map of a sample of Indians. This can be used as a reference for better understanding of disease patterns in the country too. So this has also been suggested by the Economics Survey as such, and also reaching out to more scientists who have were based abroad now, so they can be brought back to the country too. Indian scientists based abroad. The next is incidence of open defecation falls sharply. So the number of people defecating in the open in rural areas has reduced drastically in the country. It has reduced to less than half than what it was in 2014. And the Economic Survey gives the credit to the Swachh Bharat mission. So person defecating in open in rural areas was 55 crore in October 2014. It has declined to 25 crore in Jan 2018. So from 2014 to 18, this is a huge decline. Also, number of districts and villages have been declared open defecation free. Even 8 states and union territories have been declared open defecation free. This is also a point highlighted in the Economic Survey. And this open defecation has to end because lack of sanitation, according to UNICEF, is responsible for deaths of over 1 lakh children in India annually. And also it results in stunting in 48% children. Also, according to World Bank estimates, lack of sanitation facilities results in a loss of around over 6% of GDP. So this also has to stop, because it has an effect on health and of course then on economy. The last news item is need to revisit SOPs for renewables. The government, the Economic Survey says that the government needs to revisit subsidies and incentives which are provided for renewable sector, because what is seen is that the tariff here is approaching grid capacity. And some DISCOMs also want to renegotiate the power purchase agreements which they have signed earlier. So actually when SOPs are given to renewable sector, then these tariffs fall, and tariffs saw a free fall last year too. So this results in situations where renewables are cheaper than coal-based thermal powers. So then the thermal plants are being affected, and this results in a number of bad loans and non-performing assets being accumulated as such. So this is a point also highlighted by the survey. So these are the news items. Thank you.